Hello, Darthvegan here, back with another Kerbal Space Program tutorial. This time we were going to be talking about how to rescue and rendezvous with other vessels in Kerbal Space Program. You'll be doing a lot of rendezvousing with other vessels if you play Kerbal Space Program for any length of time, because you want to make space stations, you want to rescue other Kerbals, you want to transfer Kerbonauts from one ship to another. There's lots of reasons to do rendezvous, but the one you'll be doing the most at the very beginning will be rendezvousing for rescuing Kerbal. So we're going to go into mission control here, and we have two missions here in which we're supposed to rescue a Kerbal from the orbit of Kerbin. So I like the name Julful, so we're going to go ahead and take this mission here, and so we're going to go out to the tracking station here. And we're going to take a look and see where our stranded Kerbal is here. So Julful here, I'm going to turn off these so I can see better. Julful here is in an orbit around Kerbin, and it looks like it is largely a 90-degree orbit. Nothing too crazy there. And they are at an altitude of 84,000 meters, so that's not too bad. That gives you a little bit of leeway so that whenever you launch, you can get up into orbit and stabilize before you attempt to do the rescue. Now, what I like to do whenever I'm doing a rescue mission is, especially if they're in the low orbit of Kerbin like this, is I like to wait till they are right about here, this little peninsula. I don't know if you can see it because it's dark. It's on the dark side of the planet, but there's a little peninsula here. I like to wait till they get about there before I do my launch. That way, by the time they fly 2,500 meters per second here, by the time they fly through there, I will have launched and I will meet up with them relatively close, if not super close, but close enough that we can make some adjustments and do that. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to get us a rescue ship here, and I have several that I've already designed, but we might have to improve on them just a little bit, but I think they should be okay for these purposes. Let's see. Make sure you have radio control of it. So I'll put my little antenna on there. Excuse me. I put a battery and some solar panels so that I could store energy to control the Probodobodon, which will give us remote control. And then the Kerbal that we are rescuing will be in the pod. So I'm going to make sure that pod is empty. And then the rest of the ship, I think, is ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to fly up with this vessel. We're going to rescue the Kerbal, and then we're going to bring him or her back down. And I don't know if I've got one of these on here or not. And make sure that they get down to Kerbin safe and sound, and they'll become part of our crew. So that's good. So without further ado, let's get this baby launched. And I'm going to make sure that the Kerbin I'm rescuing is in the correct location. So I'm going to speed up time a little bit, make sure they get to about right here to this peninsula. And boop. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and launch. And then hopefully whenever I launch, I will be able to meet up with them relatively easily. So let's launch this rocket into space and be on our way. Here we go. And as we are approaching our apoapsis, I want to make sure that you keep in mind not to move your apoapsis too high, since his apoapsis is at 77, or his periapsis is at 77. You want to make sure yours is at some sort of comparable level, a little over, I would say around 75 or so. We want to be going a little bit faster than them, ideally. That's the hope anyway. So I'm going to go up to around 75. I'm going to kill my engines, and then I'm going to let my ship get into orbit here. Go ahead and get a little closer to my apoapsis before I do my final burn, and then we'll be set to start our maneuvers. And let's go to about 45 or so. Okay, let's go ahead and get in position to do our final burn. I've got way more fuel than I really needed, but I just wanted to make sure that we could demonstrate how to get a good rendezvous. So let's go ahead and, while we're finalizing our orbit, let's take a look at the ship. They did pass us. He passed us a few seconds ago, so he's a little bit ahead of us. So ideally we will be below him in our orbit, so that we can catch back up to him. Because the smaller your orbit, the faster you go. So if they are up higher than you, they'll be going slower than you. If they are lower than you, they'll be going faster than you. Now, it's harder to tell, of course, with an elliptical orbit, but largely that's just how it works. And not largely, that's exactly how it works. The smaller the circumference of the circle, the faster the travel around that circle is. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get a little closer to my apoapsis before I finalize my burn here, just so that we don't go too much higher. There we go. Getting a little too high for my taste. Wait just a little bit. I'm going to wait till we get right at the apoapsis. I'm looking at this marker down here. I'm counting down to time to apoapsis. And I'm going to boost and finalize my orbit. And I'll be right just about even with him. Alright. And orbit is now achieved. Okay, so I'm a little bit higher than him on my apoapsis, but not a lot. Not a lot. So now, the next thing we want to do is we want to set our rendezvous as our target. So you left click on the capsule that you want to rendezvous with, left click on it, and click set as target. Okay. So then once you click that set as target, you'll see a bunch of new icons pop up. And what these icons are telling you are a few different things. One is the ascending node and the descending node. The ascending node and the descending node are telling you if you're on the same inclinational plane of orbit. And right now we are minus 0.5 degrees off. So what we'll need to do is to adjust that is when you get close to one of these markers, either the ascending or descending, doesn't matter, you add a maneuver in there and you use these and use the normal and anti-normal to adjust it until you see that your inclination matches the inclination of your target. So as you can see, I'm adding normal to this node, and the descending node is decreasing so that it will reach closer to 0. There we go. Now, that's the first thing you want to do. You always want to be on as close to the same plane as possible. That will help your calculations and maneuvers so much that it's not even worth trying without doing that, in my opinion. You'll also see a couple of other sets of markers. Here is some orange pentagons here, and they are your first intersection between you and the other vessel. Then you'll see some purple pentagons that are the second intersection between you and the other vessel. And if you highlight over that and right click on it, it will stick that onto the view so that you don't have to highlight over it to see the information. You can see at our first intersection we're going to be 51 kilometers away from each other and 181 meters per second difference in speed. Now that 51 kilometers is quite a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to fly over here to our first maneuver node. We're going to get ourselves on the first plane, and then we're going to see how that affects our intersections. And then once we see how being on the same plane affects us, then we will go about making maneuvers to get ourselves closer than 51 kilometers at our next intersection. So the first intersection is 51 kilometers. The second one is at 56. So we're actually getting further and further away as time goes by, because he is a little bit, well, actually he's a little bit higher. So we should start getting closer once we get on the same plane here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get into position to do this node. It's a tiny little burn, 18 meters per second, but that does have to be accurate. So you want to make sure you look at your burn time and calculate the timing based on when you get to the node. So generally you want to half the burn time before and after the node at 100% thrust. So if the burn time is 0, we want to burn at 100% thrust when we're directly at the node, when this node says 0 here. So we're going to wait till it counts down to 0. We're going to burn 100% thrust for 18 meters per second. Oop, and I overburnt. That's the problem. It's easy to overburn. So now we're at plus 0.2 instead of 0. So let's just go ahead and see if we can get that corrected right quick. Let's see if I can just burn it just right quick. I'm still close to the node here, so maybe I can get down to 0. Nope, I'm too far away. Alright, so 0.2 is not bad. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to see if we can get these maneuver nodes closer together. And the way we're going to do that is by adjusting our prograde, retrograde, radial in, and radial out. So if we look at his apoapsis, it's at 87, ours is at 84. His periapsis is at 77, and ours is at 77. So really we're almost exactly the same speed that he is. So it's going to be difficult for us to catch up with him. So matter of fact, we can see he's going 2257 and we're going 2269. Now we could just make a bunch of orbits until we catch up with him, or we could make some adjustments. So I think I'll make a few adjustments here. So let's pop a maneuver node in here, and let's see what happens with our intersection here if we add some different maneuvers in here. So what I'm doing now is I'm slowing the ship down a little bit, adding some retrograde, and you can see the intersection got down to about 47, and then it started going back up again. So you kind of have to play with it and see the lowest number you can get before it starts going back up again, because usually it's going to be a combination of things to get you into the best position here. You can also move it around in the orbital path, and you'll see as you move it around, your adjustments will have a much greater effect. Just by moving it over here and making that small adjustment, we went down from 20 something down to 9.2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to see if I can slow down the ship just a little bit more. And I like to get within 1,000 meters if possible, but 2,000 is doable. So let's go ahead and see if we can get within 1,000 meters here. And we're at 2,000 meters. Another thing you can do if you're getting close but you're not quite there is you can right click on the maneuver node and you'll see two little buttons down here. One is to add an additional orbit. So if I add an orbit on there, it actually hurts us. We go from 2 to 21. So I want to take that back away. But that is a good way you can actually add orbital time in here, and it'll calculate how close you'll get. So we're going to go ahead and do this maneuver node here. We'll fly around. We'll miss our first actually, our first intersection is before we even get to our maneuver node. We don't even have to do anything. Let's just go ahead and swing around there and see how close we can get. And then we might have to make it some additional adjustments. So let's swing around. I'm just speeding up time so that we make our adjustments here. And if you have the Kerbal Engineering, or the Kerbal Engineer Redux, which I highly recommend, you can make all kinds of nice little adjustments just based on what your distance shows here. Alright, so once we get to our node, we'll see that our burn time is 0 once again. So we want to get as close to possible to our node. And this time I'm going to ease into the throttle so that I can use a little more finesse with it. So I'll actually burn a little before 0. That way I have time to use my lower throttle and and it should take into effect the timing. Now it's a guess, so it's kind of a little less precise, but it serves me well usually. All right, so now we're at 2.4. That's not bad. Technically, we could probably rendezvous with him with this distance, but let's see if we can get a little bit closer, just a little bit closer. So let's go over here to our descending node. We'll add a maneuver in there, and we're going to see if we can get that down to 0. And what I do is I just roll up or down until I figure out which will make it the best adjustment there. Okay, so now we adjusted our inclination to be perfectly 0, but now we're at 2.8. So I'm going to go ahead and make another adjustment, see if we can roll down that separation to something less than 2.8 here. Not quite. Looks like 2.8 is the best we can get from this particular node. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and burn this small node. There we go. That'll put us at 2.4. So I'm going to warp around to our next maneuver. And then we'll make one more burn to fine tune it, and then we'll be doing our intersection with the other ship. Why did my warp stop? Why did my warp stop? Oh, did I go? Oh, you have to be careful when you're making your maneuver nodes. I actually dipped down into the atmosphere a little bit. You can see I dropped my periapsis too much. So you do have to be careful of that. That's a bad thing. You don't want that. So be careful of that. My periapsis is now actually, what is my periapsis right now? My periapsis is at 68,750. So that's not good. We want to get that burnt back up as soon as possible. But I'm not super concerned with it. I think we'll be okay. It is going to hurt our maneuvers a little bit, but we're going to pop back up here pretty soon here. And hopefully, because we're at our periapsis, so it's at the lowest point. This is how not to do a rendezvous. You don't want to go down into the atmosphere. Gosh. But you'll see when we get to our adjustment here that it really didn't hurt us. It really didn't hurt us. We'll still be able to get close. We'll still be able to get really close, and then we won't have to worry about a low periapsis because we'll be going back to Kerbin anyway. All right, so we're within a few seconds of our node. I'm going to go ahead and get into position to do the burn. It's another small burn. What I'm going to do for this small burn is I'm going to hold down Control and then press the Shift key, and that will do several little small burns and hopefully get us right into position. I'm a little bit past. There we go. Very good. Okay, now our descending node is correct. Now we're up to 3.5 meters. What to do about that? Let's add one more maneuver node, and let's see if we can get that closer than 3.4. Let's see. There's a 2.3, 2.2, 2.5. There we go, 2.2. We'll do one more small burn, and then we're just gonna go ahead and show you how to make the rendezvous. This is like a tiny burn. It's not even really worth doing. I'm gonna do it just regardless because I want to. Make it a little closer. And this should bring us in just a little bit to our target. And there we go. Okay, so now we're gonna go over here to we're gonna warp to our intersection. We are going to warp to our intersection. and we're going to figure out how to get close to Julia's, or whatever her name is, Jolful's capsule. Alright, so as we approach our nearest position here, what we want to do is we want to make sure our speed indicator is set to target. And what we're going to do is we're going to burn Retrograde, which will decrease the differences in our speeds. So right now, the target is going 14.7 meters per second different than I am. And what I want to do is I want to decrease that so that it is not going faster than me. So I'm going to go ahead and burn until that gets down to 0. I'm burning Retrograde until that gets down to 0. Alright, so get up here just a little bit more. Just a little bit more, and there. Okay, so now we've passed our intersection, but there's going to be another one coming up. Our next one after this one will be really close. So what we want to do is I want to burn, now that I'm going the same speed as him, I'm going to go towards the target marker, which is this circle, a dotted circle with a dot in the middle. I'm going to burn towards him, and I'm going to watch the distance between our two ships decrease over here in the engineer. I highly recommend having Kerbal Engineer on here. I'm going to burn towards the other vessel, at about 15 meters per second or so. You don't have to go fast. Then you'll watch the distance between your two vessels decrease. Here you can see it's at 0.3. So then I want to get into position to do a retrograde burn, because when we get here at 0.3, we're going to be close enough that the other Kerbal can fly over and get in our ship. So I'm going to just fly up here. I'm going to speed up time just a little so that we can get close to our intersection. And then we'll do our burn to get us back down to 0 meters per second. And you'll see that our orbits are almost perfectly aligned after doing this. Alright, we're now at 100 meters, so really we're better now than we are at our intersection. Alright, so here we go. Let's go ahead and burn retrograde, get it down to 0. There we go. Alright, so now we should be 200 meters away from our target. And if we look, we should be able to see them somewhere in the horizon here. If we point our vessel towards it, sometimes it's hard to see them. Sometimes it's hard to see the other vessel. And where are they? I should be close enough to use the bracket keys and switch over to their vessel. Yeah, there we are. Can I see my vessel? Ah, here it is. Right there behind us. Alright, so now I am switched over to Jolful, who is a female engineer. I'm going to go EVA. And then she is going to let go, turn on her RCS, and she is going to float towards our vessel. We're going the same speed, so we shouldn't have any problem rendezvousing with the other vessel. Like so. So she's just going to zip on over there. Be sure not fly in too fast, so you don't want to break parts of the rocket or kill your Kerbal by slamming into the other vessel. Alright. Alright. And whoop, passed him. Passed him. Whoa, stop. Okay. Let's just fly up a little bit. And make sure we get into where the door is. There's the door. There you go. And float into the door. I'm using shift and control to go up and down, of course. Oops. And then the normal WASD for all else. Alright. Let's just see if we can get her to grab it. There we go. Grab it and board. And we have rendezvoused with Jolful. Excuse me. Alright. So now that we've rendezvoused, her vessel is no longer important, so we can get off target, go back to orbit, and we can land this rocket, and we will have a new Kerbal to use for missions. So where do we want to land? Do we want to land at the desert launch site? I think we do. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on how to rendezvous and rescue Kerbals. If you did enjoy it, please press the like button and maybe leave a comment. Tell me if you enjoyed it, or if I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about. And yeah, so just let me know if you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more tutorials. And if you have an idea of what you would like to see in a tutorial, put that in the comment section below too. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.